moving now to thinking less about communication, more about just the growth aspect of things. Let's think first about the technology side. So Lucille, I mean, we've spoken a little bit about the scale and some of your tech already, but I'd love to hear from you what are 2 or 3 of the biggest challenges that you face in the scale of your technology today and how you're approaching them.
Okay. A couple of things. One is certainly the need for talent, right? Because 13,000 people has to be the 13,000 of the right people. And of course, a lot of this whole upheaval we've had over the past 2 years really makes us look at the technology capabilities of many of the people we have. And that's been a lot of work. And a lot of us building out these innovation centers, building out in Silicon Valley. You know, to be a 230-year-old bank in Silicon Valley doesn't quite sound right, but we're doing it. And it's interesting to watch the people that are now starting to rethink the idea of either the big technology firm or the startup that went bust. And they've come and they actually are looking for these different types of alternatives. So we're actually hiring some talent out there, bringing a diverse point of view of how to solve problems. So that's the first piece. The second piece, I think, is making us more scalable. And a lot of that has to do with changing our architecture. So some of the big investments we've been making is extracting services from our legacy technology, compartmentalizing them, and making them RESTful API enabled. Creating building blocks as opposed to these monolithic systems so that we have these extracted and can use them in many different ways. I like to say it's like the building block mentality. Here's a new solution. What kind of building blocks do we have? What can we reuse? What do we have to incrementally build? Put that together, that's your new solution. Yeah. Getting that kind of mindset has been challenging, and doing that hard work of pulling out the value from the legacy applications is a long, hard climb. We're not done with that yet, but we're making good strides. The last piece is breaking down some paradigms and approach of how we do things. You know, new exponential type organizations don't have to build everything on their own. So the whole idea of group sourcing, the whole idea of deciding what services we want to be in the building in, or how do we partner with other types of solutions. If any of you have heard of Symphony, Symphony is a consortium of many of the financial services firms to build collaboration type model, of which we're a major investor in that, as many of the major financial services firms are. We're actually group sourcing how to build a solution so that we can all deal with it. And initial states will be used mainly for instant messaging, but it really has the tons of potential to really take it to a whole new way that we communicate across the industry. So deciding what we need to build there, what's our common core, and what else we can partner with, that's the way we're really going to be able to scale.
So modularity and new ways of thinking about actually developing that business. Now, Camille, I think it's a little different when you're talking about growth at Lucille's scale from when you're talking about growth from 10 to, say, 60 people in your technology org. Can you speak a little bit about how you think about scaling your team for success?
Sure. So I think one of the interesting things about scaling a startup is that you inevitably build something kind of crappy to begin with, and then you build something slightly less crappy the second iteration, and then you build something slightly less crappy again. You're sort of in this constant process of like just trying to make it a little bit better over time and over time. But what I'm engaged in right now, actually, and over the past 6 months, I had a lot of time to think about, like, all right, so we did this, what I call quote unquote microservices architecture, right? So we were actually on Drupal, not a good platform for what I was doing, good platform for a lot of things. And we knew that we had to get out of Drupal so we could actually build features. So we did this really actually pretty good scramble to extract components, put them into RESTful services, and link them up eventually to a Ruby API, Ruby sort of thin client, show them to our customers. Great. Now we have sort of service spaghetti. So we've got lots of services, fortunately no cyclical graphs, and we have lots of services though, and they're all doing different things, and the front end is calling directly to lots of different ones, and it's a little bit of a mess. So it's services, it's very scalable, but it's a little bit of a mess. Now, fine. The challenge there is actually that you can't really scale an organization when you have that level of a mess in your services. You actually have to clean up your architectural mess so that you can actually scale your organization. So we're actually moving to a model where we still will have services, but we're going to have a couple of different API layers that are really controlling how the main parts talk to each other. And then you can have services that have specialized functionality that are called by those API layers, but there's a fairly well delineated sets of ownership between, for example, things that control and manage our inventory, the ROI of our inventory, the arbitrage opportunities of showing different inventory to people, versus the users layer, the personalization layer, the stuff that actually shows beautiful things to our customers on our website or our app. So doing that separation, doing that architectural separation, a lot of members of my team were like, okay, I guess this makes sense, but like, why would we waste our time doing this? And I'm like, because we're not going to scale as a tech team if we can't separate this stuff out and stop stepping on each other's toes and stop having to change this and 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 this for every single thing, and losing, having that sort of dispersed ownership of so many different little pieces of code. So I think a lot of scaling, even when you're trying to scale an organization, often you actually have to change your architecture if you want to scale that organization. And that's been, it seems obvious in retrospect, but certainly it was not entirely obvious when I went into the exercise.
Yep. The two are just completely intertwined, both the architecture and the people, so you can go horizontal. So Minerva, for you, there's not one monolithic tech stack that you need to scale and make modular. You have, and I believe I actually found this in print, you have the challenge, you're required, I believe, to scale the culture of innovation, technology, friendliness within the whole city. So talk about scaling, right? How do you even think about that challenge of scaling that culture?
Yeah, I think, I sort of borrow a lot of the lessons I learned from software design and kind of bring it to organization design. So, when you talk about good design, it's like decoupled, modular, interoperable, don't try to boil the ocean. So I think the idea that you can kind of set a single standard for all of New York City is kind of silly, right? And so, the approach to sort of breaking down the silos has been much more about connecting the dots. So one of my really fun jobs is to find those pockets of innovation in areas of the city and then connect them and find those common patterns and say, hey, you have a fleet of cars and you have a fleet of cars. Maybe we should, map our geospatial coordinates in the same way so that we can feed that data over to the open data portal, and you can have a kind of cool layered map where everything actually aligns, So that's a big part of what I do, and people find this really, pretty cool. So we're inside government. We're promoting the concept that finding those pockets of innovation. The other piece is bringing the creativity and innovation from outside government in. So this is encouraging incubators, innovators, doing a lot of really interesting requests for, we're putting out soon various requests for innovation, requests for proposals, and saying, hey, people, we've got this problem. Maybe you can help us solve it, and we'll take the best proposal and then run with it. A perfect example of this is Link NYC. I don't know if you guys heard, but we put out an RFP that said we need to know what we can do with these really old payphones. When's the last time anybody used an actual payphone?
They may not know what it is.
Right. Well, I'm sure that 15 years ago when they did this franchise, they thought this was like really cool. Wow, there's this, you can just put a quarter in and make a phone call. It's awesome, right? But then, these payphone franchises were running out, and we put out this RFP that said, we think the best idea, we'll take the best idea of what to do with these payphones that people really like use it to put their gum in or hide from the cops or, when it's raining, right? And they never work. But they were actually generating revenue because of the advertising around them. That's how they make money. That's why they're still there, right? So we put out this RFP and we got, some great responses. The winner was announced last December. It's a consortium called CityBridge. And starting this year, by the end of the year, we're going to take all the payphones and turn them into free Wi-Fi hotspots. They'll be at a minimum of 100 megs, and we'll go up to a gigabyte in some of these locations. And so we announced the winner. Then it went through a whole bunch of government approvals and everything, and we'll probably have some prototypes available in late spring, early summer. But basically, these are going to be these kiosks with digital advertising on the side. It's going to have a tablet embedded in it where you can make a free phone call anywhere in the United States. And within 150 feet, you can just log on. It's Hotspot 2.0, security, you'll have access to free Wi-Fi.
Awesome. Digital advertising, you say?
And the best part is, then there's a button for 911, 311. So they're going to be like, free phones on steroids. And we see this as a really great opportunity for like hyper local ads, for businesses, smaller businesses to buy micro ads. That's buy a sandwich 20 feet this way, kind of thing. And with some of these having gigabit speeds, we think that that's going to be a huge change in the model for it. So this is like one of the big innovative things we've done in the city so far. Just two others real quick. One is .nyc. So New York City is one of the first. We're kind of in a fight with Las Vegas, but the first top level domain that is belongs to the city of New York. So if you want to register Minerva.nyc, you can do that, but you have to be physically a resident of New York City. So we opened up this new top-level domain so that small businesses could sign up the domain name maybe they couldn't get in the .com, TLD.
My tech team got dresscode.nyc. We're very happy about that.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
the name of our
thanks.
tech blog, Dresscode.
Cool. And then finally, we did a joint project, so public-private kind of thing with Gust and IBM, and we created digital.nyc. It's the one-stop shop for all things tech in New York City. So I just checked it the other day. There were over 6,500 startups listed, 800 VCs 800 events, and I think 300 VCs listed in New York City. So that's going to be, the place for anybody to go to check out the tech scene in New York. So, this is in addition to sort of breaking down silos and doing refactoring of old legacy systems, I also get to do this cool stuff.